I don't like what you say or think. I'm blocking you. I don't agree with what he said on Twitter. I'm unfollowing him. Can you believe that she's doing this in public? I'm going to video it and put it up on YouTube to embarrass her. I don't think I like the things that my boss says at work. I'm going to quit my job and then report him for sexual harassment. I don't like the way they're looking at me. I'm going to put them on blast. I'm going to try to get someone in trouble at a restaurant because I don't like the way they talk to me. I haven't heard from a friend of mine, so I think that means they hate me. Am I talking about BPD splitting, or am I talking about cancel culture? Today's video is an exciting one for me to produce because I've been thinking about this for a long time and its effects on those of us with BPD or CPTSD. And I'm going to today talk about cancel culture in a whole, what I think of it, and how it is so similar, almost identical, in fact, to BPD splitting. I'm going to talk about the symptoms. I'm going to talk about the signs. I'm going to talk about the feelings behind it. I'm going to define which of these is which. And then I'm going to talk to you about why it is so dangerous for those of us with BPD and what a detriment it is to your recovery with this cancel culture plague. And I do think it's a plague running amok throughout the country and honestly throughout the world right now. There's a lot of countries where cancel culture is run amok. I'm going to talk about why it's important that you actually fight against cancel culture, what that means for your BPD and BPD splitting. I'm going to give you some examples that I've seen in my life. I'm going to highlight a few examples that I've seen that have played out in the real world. And then I'm going to give you 5 tips to combat cancel culture and your splitting and how you can help yourself, help others, and identify the signs and stop them in the tracks so that you can be more of an accepting, welcoming, warm, and gray zoned type of person. Let's get going. My name's Jen and you're watching BPD Woman. On this channel, you will learn how to more effectively live and manage your borderline personality disorder. If you have CPTSD or are a highly emotional person or have difficulty managing your emotions, you are also in the right place. On this channel, I share my experience and wisdom and therapeutic challenges, successes, and the insights and nuances of what it's like to live with BPD after going through treatments for the last 2 decades and essentially living with the disorder for the last 30 years. Although I am not a psychologist or a life coach, and I do recommend getting a psychologist and enrolling yourself in DBT and finding a center or a therapeutic facility that specializes in personality disorders, I can answer one question that almost none of those folks cannot, which is, what is it like to live with borderline personality disorder? And through my insights and wisdom, I can offer insights and nuances to you that your therapist or psychologist just can't because they just don't live with the disorder. And so I sort of offer that unique perspective. I've gone through about 6 rounds of DBT. I've read every major book. I've participated in inpatient, outpatient, group, one-on-one therapies. I've done lots of research. I keep up on stats and studies. And my goal is to help you achieve your goals using positive approaches to recovery, positive solution-based approaches to recovery. If you're a family member or friend or just someone who's interested in these general subjects, please join us. There's a playlist just for you to help you get started, and it's called Vids Just For You, Tools for the Family. Well, if that all sounds good to you, could you please hit subscribe and that bell below? It's right there. It's right there. So you never miss a beat. I produce anywhere from 1, 3, sometimes up to 5 videos a week, depending on the week, and always offering something new. I also take video suggestions, and if you're too shy to leave me a comment below, you can email me at womanbpd@gmail.com. That's womanbpd@gmail.com. Let's get going. So let's define a little bit about what BPD splitting is before we start going into exactly what cancel culture is. So BPD splitting is a superhuman excuse me. Yeah, it is. It's superhuman. Okay. It's a super common element in identifying those with BPD. Okay. And splitting essentially is a black or white approach to a way of thinking, a pattern of interacting. It can be demonstrated in thoughts, actions, feelings. It's a very extreme measure of how you compartmentalize something. So it's something that embodies a difficulty in being able to hold two opposing thoughts at the same time. Now, some people call that cognitive dissonance, and this is not cognitive dissonance necessarily. Cognitive dissonance might be something that you say, well, I really want to lose weight and get healthier, but then you continue to eat poorly or you don't exercise. That's two very opposing things. However, a more gray zoned way to approach that would be like, I would like to lose weight, but every week I am going to have a cheat day. Okay, that would sort of be a middle ground. A very black or white way to look at that situation is either to become anorexic or to become obese, right? To either exercise 5 hours every single day and have a cup of tea and some bread at night, or eating every hour and, overindulging in your calories. So it's extremes, right? And I use this term called gray zoning. And gray zoning is the ability to find the black and the white, the good and the bad, the happy and the sad, the anxious and the calm in all situations, and then making a very informed decision based on that to proceed in life or with your decisions. And so splitting is identified primarily in those of us with BPD because we've come from very traumatic backgrounds. Things have never been very clear for us. If you're like me, you grew up in a very abusive, traumatic home where there was financial, emotional instability, there was sexual abuse, there was physical abuse. Sometimes your mother would disappear for a month and you didn't know what was happening. And so you grow up in a very chaotic environment. And for my money, and from what I've read over the years in my experience, growing up in a super chaotic environment where there is no pattern of stability leaves you striving for real concrete stability, which makes sense then that you might grow up and be like, you've blown me off, you're out of my life. You said you would be here and you were 30 minutes late, I'm done with you, right? Because not only has it evaded us this security in life to be finding a stability, right? Now we really overcompensate and we really want that stability. And so we, combined with our traumatic past or things that people have done with us, we're also very hypervigilant. Okay, and hypervigilance means being in a excited and heightened sense of being on alert for danger, and so you're looking over your shoulder. You've kind of got your head on a swivel, and that's good in some capacities, like being a police officer, for an example. But in a day-to-day, and it's good to be cautious, but you can always take it too far. And so if you haven't had that sense of security, now you might really overcompensate. And so you tend to make very black and white decisions. One, because you're looking for stability, and two, because you're on high alert, because you're on high alert looking for the next bad thing to happen. And so you find it very hard to hold two opposing things, Think of a time when you were in a really traumatic blow up fight with a spouse or a family member, and you just had it in your head, like you were so emotionally dysregulated that after this event, you were like, I am through with them. I am never talking to them again. This is over. I can't believe they've done it. I'm blocking you. And then maybe the next day, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I feel shameful. Like I overreacted in that situation. And so in the moment when you're having the argument, you kind of forget all of the other wonderful things or trustworthy things. And so in that example, a way to kind of put a a label on that would be inability to see the good in someone when temporarily you're feeling bad. And so we talk about an emotional baseline, and you might have a relationship baseline with someone. You know, they're generally always reliable. They generally always show up for you, right? And maybe 1 time out of 10, they don't show up, right? So things happen, life happens. So, but splitting is just an extreme kind of thinking, and it's built on, it's built on a rejection of ideas, witch hunting, ostracizing, ignoring someone, blocking someone, shaming someone, threatening their livelihood because you don't like what they've done to you and you're going to get revenge. Now, am I talking now about BPD splitting? Or am I talking about cancel culture? Well, now I'm starting to talk about cancel culture. So let's talk a little bit about what cancel culture is. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about what cancel culture is. And I don't probably have to reach too deep. I'm sure you're pretty familiar with what cancel culture is. But I am going to read these 2 different descriptions that I have found online. So here's the first. Cancel culture, okay, is a modern form of ostracism in which someone is thrust out of social or professional circles, whether it be online or social media or in person. Those are subject to the ostracism are said to have been canceled. Okay. Urban Dictionary states, and I really like this description. Urban Dictionary defines canceling as to dismiss something or somebody and to reject an idea or individual. And when people use the term unironically, it reveals a big problem with our culture. Cancel culture, as it currently exists, doesn't give people a chance to learn from or apologize for their wrongdoings. So essentially, that description says one and done. You make one mistake in your life, you're out. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody in this world or that I've ever met that's walked this earth that's never made a mistake. So you can see this is a super unrealistic, high bar that if someone doesn't agree with you, or if they hold an opposing view, or they're a Republican, or they're a Democrat, or they're gay, or they're straight, you don't like them for a certain reason, or you take something that they've said and you blow it up into something that it's not, and then you essentially set out to ruin them. And another way to kind of label ruining is revenge. How many times, raise your hand, I'm raising mine, how many times have you acted out of revenge because your splitting thinking led you down a dark path? Okay, think about that. So cancel culture and BPD splitting share a lot of different things. Similarly, let's talk about that. So talking about what splitting as it relates to BPD and the kind of historical categorizations in the DSM and what therapists would just define as splitting, and what cancel culture is, they share a lot of very common similarities. Rejecting of ideas, latching on to one particular idea and then admonishing, dismissing, or rejecting someone else's opposing view. There's a kitty in the background. Banishment, ostracization. You're not like us, so get out of our group. It's very immature. Witch hunting, we're coming for you. We're going to take your job. We're going to give your business a bad name. We're going to leave you a bad review. We're going to affect your livelihood. And the biggest characteristic is both of these are based on shame. I will oust you. I will expose you. I will tell someone you are racist. You didn't agree with me? Well, I'm going to call you a racist. I'm going to call you transphobic. You're not going to put your pronouns on Twitter. You're transphobic. Like there's an actress, her name is Sarah Paulson, and she's fantastic. She's been in a lot of things. She's been on mostly American Horror Story. You probably know her from, and she's gay. She's been in a lesbian relationship with her longtime girlfriend, and they live in Hollywood. And someone came after her and they were like, you don't have your pronouns on Twitter. You have to put them on Twitter. And she's like, I'm gay. I'm not transphobic. And you're not going to tell me what to do. And I don't need to put my pronouns on Twitter to support gays and trans folks, but thanks, peace. And they tried to come for her. She's gay, she's a part of the community in an open relationship and has always been supportive of the community. But because a couple of trolls suggest, because she won't put up her pronouns, they're going to oust her. They want to cancel her. They want to silence her. They want to spin it because she is simply not doing what someone else wants. Okay. And so that's where a lot of this comes from. You know, it used to be that you could debate ideas and thoughts in college. Okay. Or freely at parties, right? This is why I went to school. Now, like, I mean, what do they call it? Like this anti-racist indoctrination. I forget like exactly what it's called. And this, every white person is racist, or they don't know that they're racist, or, you know, if you disagree with someone and they just happen to be of a different color, then you have, you need to be canceled because it's not that you disagree with them. It's because you're racist and you're taking away their experience. You know, it's sad is what it is. It's sad, you know, and it goes on. And essentially what these canceling tactics are manipulation polls. That's all they are. You know, somebody's going to put an ism after your name simply because in large part you disagree with them. Of course there's racist people and sexist people and transphobic people, okay? But they might not be sexist, racist, or transphobic or need to be canceled because they disagree with your point of view, or they won't put their pronouns on, or whatever the case may be. And you know, so this is like this dangerous trend that we're going to. It's a witch hunt, you know? And people are now afraid to share how they feel about a certain subject. You know, they're afraid to talk openly and freely. They're afraid to say, I don't like someone, or I don't want to invite someone over without a fear of thinking, am I going to be labeled an ism, sexism? And what you're seeing is in large part this movement that someone cannot have two opinions about something, one good and one bad, in the same breath. So does that sound like splitting or cancel culture? Well, it's both. It's both. And primarily at the essence of this is shaming people, okay? Which, how many of us with BPD deal with shame? Okay, it's a huge, huge part. It can be a huge part, like, you know, the shame of what you've done or who you are, the things that have been done to you. And so now cancel culture means that you are simply not allowed to make a mistake, have an opposing view, be different. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like a club that I want to be in. Are you telling me that like everyone in the club has to be the same? Because that sounds terrible to me. So I don't want that. Now, let's talk a little bit, now that we know and we've talked a little bit about what each of these, what cancel culture looks like and what black and white thinking or splitting looks like, and how that they're based both on shame and someone not being able to hold two similar or opposing views, let's talk about why this is important for those of us with BPD. If you have BPD, you already got enough on your plate, and depending on where you are in your recovery cycle, I'm about 20 years in, you know, it's easier for me to have gray zone thinking. I definitely now try to, sometimes it's just more for me now an automatic thing that I'm using gray zone thinking. And if I'm catching myself in extreme thought, I'll pull back. I'll ask myself, am I dysregulated? Am I hungry? Am I tired? Like, what's going on with me? Am I feeling scared right now? These are things that I've been able to put in place and practice over the years that have gotten me to this point. But, you know, when I was starting out doing this, like, I failed a lot and I split a lot and I cut people off a lot. And so if you're just starting out in your recovery, you're not going to be quite as strong on your feet. You're still learning to walk in your recovery shoes. And so cancel culture is so dangerous because it is becoming so normalized. So normalized. You know, this is going to be maybe an extreme comparison and analogy, but think of it like an abusive relationship. You know, abusive relationships don't start off by a guy punching a woman in the face. They start off with little snarky comments, right? They start off by little manipulation or controlling tactics. They may start off with comments like, "You're going to wear that?" You know, they may start off with things like, "Okay, well, I need you to text me wherever you're going." And then it may be a verbal push, and then it may be a physical push, and it's gradual. And over time, you know, you talk to people that have come out of these types of relationships, of which I have found myself in some of them over the years. And, you know, once you're out of it, you're like, "Oh my God, like that was abusive." But over time, you know, the water was slowly turned up. And so you got acclimated to the abuse. And think of that in cancel culture society as encompassing more and more of your splitting. And the more other people are normalized by doing this behavior, by canceling people, by ostracizing people, by, "I'm not going to watch Disney Plus anymore because Gina Carano has a different opinion than me. I'm going to cancel my subscription." Okay. I think Disney will be just fine. Okay. But so it's normalized because it's everywhere. Okay. And it actually gives me another term that I want to put. Sorry about my big face being in the way. Okay. I just want to write that down to one of our tips. So people are moving from this less validating and inclusive culture where they don't care, you know, that you have a different opinion, and they don't care that you come from a different background, and they just judge you based on the merits of who you are and how you treat others. And by the way, who wants to be around somebody that has all of the same viewpoints as they do? I don't. I mean, sure, mostly, of course, people that I'm around are like me, but like that doesn't mean that I tune out what other people have to say. As long as they're saying it reasonably and respectfully, I'm generally inclined to listen. And so it can be very dangerous for your BPD recovery, and especially for splitting, because splitting thinking is essentially cancel culture. And the more that people do it, and the more that people do it that don't have a personality disorder, the harder it's going to be to recognize the dangers of it. And the deeper you get into your black and white thinking, the deeper you will be entrenched in extremes, and the less likely you are to move out of that cognitive distortion and move out of your BPD and get into some effective behaviors and thinking. I did a video on cognitive distortions, and in it I talk a lot about distorted thinking and black and white thinking, and check that out because it ties into this. So why have we moved in this culture and in other Western cultures? Why are we moving to a less invalidating culture? I'm not sure. You know, I'm interested to hear your thoughts, and I would like you to write them below. I'm a Gen Xer. I know that many of you that watch the channel are I know that it ranges different age groups and generations, but I know that there are many millennials that watch this channel, and I thank you. And I think it's easy to say, "Oh, well, it's built on snowflakes," and that, you know, everybody got a trophy when they were growing up and nobody was able to take any criticism, and you know, the slightest injury to their ego was like this traumatic event where they got PTSD. And certainly there is a movement of that. Yes, this sense of entitlement, and you know, everyone is on an equal par and nothing should be based on merit. And, you know, you hurt my feelings. Like, yes, of course, that's a part of it. But there are plenty of other generations. Okay, so Gen X, above Gen X would be baby boomers. Above baby boomers would be the greatest generation. Those would be like your grandparents, well, my grandparents, or your great-grandparents if you're a millennial. And they certainly have participated in cancel culture and disinclusion. And I think one of the main reasons, aside from like what I would say snowflake mentality and victimhood, is fear. Because if you fear your business being ostracized, if you fear someone calling you a racist, if you live in fear of being rejected, if you live in fear of not voicing your opinions, then you will act out and live in a life of fear. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a life of fear. And I'm going to open my big fat mouth and I'm going to say what I'm going to say and I'm going to stand up. So I'm going to share an example with you, a very easy one. I worked in a corporate job to demonstrate this. I worked in a corporate job. And finally, excuse me, before moving on, the snowflake mentality and the fear mentality. And then there's a third, and that's people who don't think that you can hold two opposing views of someone. For instance, I had a job several years ago before I quit the corporate world. So we're talking about 6 years almost now. And I was in this job and I had a boss, and I didn't like her, but professionally she was type A. She knew her job, she got shit done, and she was proficient, and she could answer my questions, and she was on it, and she ran shit. She was great. But I didn't like her as a person. Like, she did some backstabby things, and she, rubbed people the wrong way, and she could be really nitpicky with things. And I remember talking to the HR guy once, and we were just sort of talking about like my review, and I said something, and he was like, well, I remember that you didn't like your old boss at all. You said some really bad things about her. And I was like, yeah, it was like, I didn't like her, but she was really good at her job. I didn't understand why that was like such a surprising concept for this HR guy to like get, right? And so that's an example of, that's not cancel culture, but that's an inability to hold two opposing views. Like, I can like you and then think you're a bad employee. And I can also think you're a great employee and think you're a terrible person. Okay. So now that we've talked about the origins and the comparisons and why it's so important to avoid for your BPD recovery, I'm going to give you now not 5, but 6 tips on how you can combat this. Let's talk about it. How can you keep on your BPD recovery in a growing world of cancel cultureism? How can you not fall into the trap of canceling others or being canceled yourself? How can you fight against the mob mentality and take yourself out of shaming yourself or shaming others or being allowed to shame? Well, I'm going to give you 6 different tips. Here's tip number 1. Keep yourself thinking in the gray zone. No black or white thinking. Okay? Think about, even right now, I'm going to like be silent for a few seconds. Think about a situation that you've really been looking at an extreme way. Perhaps you're really pissed off at your spouse, or you are really angry with someone at work, okay? And now I want you to like think of that in a gray area. So instead of thinking something like, I really hate my spouse and I can't believe that they missed our date night and that means that they don't love me, try to consider a not a black and white approach, but a gray approach. My husband is very compassionate and loving, and he always makes our dates. He didn't make it this time, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't love me. And I wonder what's going on with him. Maybe something happened to him that day, okay? So avoiding extremes, and that sort of goes into tip number 2, which is the way to get out of that black and white thinking. Easier said than done, I know. To get out of that black and white thinking and go into that gray zone thinking, use this and that, or and or sentences. Avoid words like never, always, all the time. Avoid extremes in the way you speak, think, and the way you talk. So that might be, for instance, I don't like my boss, but she really gets her job done and she's a great boss. Okay. I don't agree with Gina Carano's thoughts on political matters, but I really like her as an actress, and she's a badass woman who's done a lot for women, and I like her. Okay. You're my friend, and I don't agree with your viewpoint, but it doesn't mean that I don't accept you, right? So these are some ways to use and or sentences. Get in the habit of trying to put a black and a white thought into a sentence to make it gray. Hey, come here, leave it. Leave that alone. Come here. Thank you. That's it. Sorry about that, guys. Here's the third tip. The third tip is stand up to people. Stand up. Don't be bullied. Don't let someone threaten to harass you. Don't let someone's wokeism, if you don't want it put on you, be put on you. Don't allow someone to try to banish you or ignore you or ostracize you. Throw it back on them. Expose them. You know, the minute that someone starts to cancel you or say that you're a racist because you disagreed with them, you fight them back with a question. You stand up for yourself. Really? How am I racist? For instance, Sharon Osbourne, she was just on Bill Maher on Real Time on HBO the other day, and she was essentially fired from her job on The Talk, which is a US TV show, for disagreeing with a co-host. And the co-host was a Black woman, Cheryl Underwood, and she and others on the show, not just Miss Underwood, we're having this conversation with Sharon and about the Meghan Markle and Prince Harry interview that they gave to Oprah. And Piers Morgan, he's a British journalist, he came out and said, I don't believe a word that Meghan Markle said. And the next day on this show, everyone on this show was like, he's racist for not believing there. He's taking away Meghan Markle's right to her experience. And Sharon Osbourne said, tell me what he said that was racist. A fair question, a real question. Why? Because Piers Morgan didn't say anything racist about Meghan Markle. He simply said he doesn't like her and he didn't believe her. But there is a turn of the screw that someone's going to cancel you because they don't like your opinion, and the way that they're going to manipulate you or gaslight you is to now call you a racist, which is meant to shame you back into shame and to silence you. So instead you do what she did. You say, tell me what he said that was racist, right? Like I'll do that, right? Someone's like, oh, I can't believe you said that. Really? Tell me what it is that I said exactly. Let's have this out. And you'll know that you're dealing with someone that's pretty weak if they don't engage in that conversation with you further. I had an instance where I was doing one of these food delivery apps, and I was delivering, and I went into a building, and this like 22-year-old concierge guy, you know, wanted to take my temperature before I went upstairs to make a delivery. And he was like, do you mind if I take your temperature? I was like, yeah, I mind. You're not a doctor. Okay, I'm vaccinated, number 2. And number 3, only 30% of people, something like 30% of people with COVID will actually present with a temperature. So taking someone's temperature is absolutely a terrible way to diagnose someone potentially with COVID. So I said, no, I will not, right? Like, everybody's not a doctor. Like, I'm limiting these rules. Like, I'm vaccinated. Why do I got to keep wearing a mask? Anyway, I digress. But so he said, okay. And I said all this to him. Everything I just said to you, I said that. I said, no, you're not a doctor. It's a 30%, inclination if you have a temperature that you have COVID. I'm not going to do that. So no. And he said, okay, you can just put the food right there and I'll have the person come down. I said, fine. So a day or two later, I get an email from this food delivery app, and it was something to the effect of security incident. And this diner, so apparently what happened, I can't confirm, but apparently this diner, the client, the customer, was told about this interaction by the concierge person that I refused to let them take my temperature, and then took the time, think about this, took the time on a Saturday night to then call whichever one of these apps it was, I won't say which one, to complain that I wouldn't have my temperature taken, and that was relayed to me in an email that was a security incident and that I should be careful about like what I say or, acts of aggression. And I was like, right. I was like, you're right. It isn't an unsafe. This is what I wrote back. I wrote them like, I just blasted off like 5 emails. I was like, first of all, I was like, go ahead, deactivate me, because there is an unsafe element to this job, but it's not from me. I was wearing 2 masks and a face shield and was already vaccinated the day that I made that delivery. There is an unsafe element, and I'm the one exposed to it. From people who don't want to wear their masks, to customers who come out without masks and they're breathing all over me, to the amount of people that I deal with, from the traffic and the near miss car accidents and the anxiety. I was like, so yeah, I said, don't push your woke bullshit on me. Go ahead and deactivate me. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Right? And then I said, by the way, I said all of my interactions with customers are generally captured on my dash cam, so I'm happy to send you any video. So please tell me in detail what this security incident was. I'll wait. Guess what? I never heard a single damn word back. Nobody emailed me, nobody called me, and certainly I wasn't deactivated. So I stood up for myself. I said, you are not going to play this game on me. I was like, a security incident? That's an absolute snowflake tragedy to throw out a word like that, or the way people toss around PTSD. If you think that someone saying, no, I'm not going to have my temperature taken is a security incident, then guess what? You've had a very great life, because that is not a security threat. So good luck. Okay. I digress. Number 4. A 4th tip to keep you out of this cancel culture splitting and to combat it so that you come out more effective and more level-headed in your approaches on things is to forgive, but then observe. A forgiveness is not a blank check for future behaviors to be whatever they are, come what may. You know, in my opinion, apologies are absolutely worthless unless you take that check to the bank and you cash it and it has a return. So you can make a mistake. You know, a lot of this, again, with this cancel culture, this one description that, you know, no one's allowed to make a mistake anymore. They're canceled. Allow people to make mistakes. Allow yourself to make mistakes. Allow yourself to have different opinions. Allow other people to have different opinions. Welcome that. Forgive others when they have made a mistake, but then observe their future behaviors. So if they say they're going to make a concerted effort to change, believe them, but then observe with time. And if you see over and over that they're not sticking to that and they're not trying to be the better them that you need for them to be in your life, well, then it's time for you to make a decision to move on. Okay. Another tip to combat this is embrace compassion and think about the times that it hurt when someone was mean to you or kicked you out of the group, and when someone didn't give you a second chance and you thought that you wanted a second chance. Think about compassion. Think about saying, it's okay. Think about saying, you're my friend and I respect you, but I respectfully disagree. I mean, that used to be something that was said all the time. Well, I understand what you're saying, but I think we'll agree to disagree, or I respectfully disagree. Embrace compassion for people and to yourself. You know, no one's perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. This cat thinks he's perfect, but no one's perfect, right? And finally, I want to put a big one out there. You know, YouTube is just about the only social media that I have. And I don't have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I don't have any of that. And I used to, and I got off of it a really long time ago. And long before, I probably got off it in like 2016. But I got off of it long ago because it was just doing dings to my self-esteem and causing me a lot of anxiety. And it's not representative of real life. It's a microcosm. You know, let's pose. Here's my dinner. Oh, I have 500 friends. Why do I still feel empty? But I want to ask you to avoid cancel culture. And a way to avoid cancel culture is to avoid social media. Okay. And it can be a slippery slope. You may be like, all right, well, I'm only going to spend 20 minutes on social media every day. And then that turns into like 5 hours of going down the rabbit hole. But you're going to find a lot of extreme thinking and thoughts on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, right? You're going to see a lot of bias. And if it's more difficult for you at this point in your recovery to see that sort of thing and be bogged down in it, then turn it off for a while, or only go to your page and post things. Don't read the responses. Like sometimes I'll like reply to certain articles from a news source, and then like other people will write back or like comment. I generally don't read their replies because either they're saying something that's going to be nasty and they disagree, and I don't really want to let that toxic energy into me, or they're going to say something that is in agreement, which is fine as well. But the point is that I'm fine with what I said and I put it out there, and I don't feel the need to defend it any longer. So that's another way that you can avoid. I hope that this talk today has been helpful on BPD splitting and cancel culture. This is not a phenomenon that I really dealt with when I was in my 20s and in my 30s. This is really something that's taken off in the last couple of years. And if you're just starting out in your BPD therapy, or you're having a difficult time with your BPD splitting and your cognitive distortions, and again, check out that cognitive distortions video, then this culture is making your recovery so much harder. And I hope with this video and the tips that I've given today, I hope that you will be able to use that to your advantage to keep working towards your recovery. My name's Jen. You've been watching BPD Woman. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, shoot me a note, write me an email at womanbpd@gmail.com. I'm waiting for your emails. I haven't gotten one. I'm waiting. Send them. Until I speak with you next time, in everything you do, please be effective. Bye-bye.